a soldier. A sergeant, to be sure, but that is a sort of a soldier, you know. When he wished to marry poor Bridget, my sister, I told the girl what he was, as in duty bound, and what she might expect from such a husband. But you know how it is with girls when their minds are jammed by an inclination. It is true the sergeant has risen in his calling, and they say he is an important man at the fort, but his poor wife has not lived to see it all, for she has now been dead these 14 years. A soldier's calling is honorable, provided he is fit only on the side of right, returned the Pathfinder. And as the Frenchers are always wrong, and his sacred majesty and these colonies are always right, I take it the sergeant has a quiet conscience as well as a good character. I have never slept more sweetly than when I have fit the Mingos, though it is the law with me to fight always like a white man and never like an Indian. The Sarpent here has his fashions, and I have mine, and yet have we fit side by side these many years, without either thinking a hard thought concerning the other's ways. I tell him there is but one heaven and one hell, notwithstanding his traditions, though there are many paths to both. That is rational, and he is bound to believe you, though, I fancy, most of the roads to the last are on dry land. The sea is what my poor sister Bridget used to call a purifying place, and one is out of the way of temptation when out of the sight of land. I doubt if as much can be said in favor of your lakes up hereaway. That towns and settlements lead to sin, I will allow, but our lakes are bordered by the forests, and one is every day called upon to worship God in such a temple. That men are not always the same, even in the wilderness, I must admit, for the difference between a Mingo and a Delaware is as plain to be seen as the difference between the sun and the moon. I am glad, friend Cap, that we have met. However, if it be only that you may tell the big Sarpent here that there are lakes in which the water is salt. We have been pretty much of one mind since our acquaintance began, and if the Mohican has only half the faith in me that I have in him, he believes all that I have told him touching the white men's ways and nature's laws. But it has always seemed to me that none of the redskins have given as free a belief as an honest man likes to the accounts of the big salt lakes, and to that of there being rivers that flow upstream. This comes of getting things wrong end foremost, answered Cap, with a condescending nod. You have thought of your lakes and rifts as the ship, and of the ocean and the tides as the boat. Neither Arrowhead nor the Serpent need doubt what you have said concerning both, though I confess myself to some difficulty in swallowing the tale about there being inland seas at all, and still more that there is any sea of fresh water. I have come this long journey as much to satisfy my own eyes concerning these facts as to oblige the sergeant and magnate, though the first was my sister's husband, and I love the last like a child. You are wrong, friend Cap, very wrong, to distrust the power of God in anything, returned Pathfinder earnestly. They that live in the settlements and the towns have confined and unjust opinions concerning the might of his hand, but we, who pass our time in his very presence, as it might be, see things differently. I mean such of us as have white natures. A redskin has his notions, and it is right that it should be so, and if they are not exactly the same as a Christian white man's, there is no harm in it. Still, there are matters which belong altogether to the ordering of God's providence, and these salt and fresh-water lakes are some of them. I do not pretend to account for these things, but I think it the duty of all to believe in them. Hold on there, Master Pathfinder, interrupted Cap, not without some heat. In the way of a proper and manly faith, I will turn my back on no one when afloat, although more accustomed to make all snug aloft, and to show the proper canvas, than to pray when the hurricane comes. I know that we are but helpless mortals at times, and I hope I pay reverence where reverence is due. All I mean to say is this, that, being accustomed to see water in large bodies salt, I should like to taste it before I can believe it to be fresh. God has given the salt lick to the deer, and he has given to man, redskin and white, the delicious spring at which to slake his thirst. It is unreasonable to think that he may not have given lakes of pure water to the west, and lakes of impure water to the east." Cap was awed, in spite of his overweening dogmatism, by the earnest simplicity of the Pathfinder, though he did not relish the idea of believing a fact which, for many years, he had pertinaciously insisted could not be true. Unwilling to give up the point, and at the same time unable to maintain it against a reasoning to which he was unaccustomed, and which possessed equally the force of truth, faith, and probability, he was glad to get rid of the subject by evasion. "Well, well, friend Pathfinder," said he, "we will leave the argument where it is, and we can try the water when we once reach it. Only mark my words, I do not say that it may not be fresh on the surface. The Atlantic is sometimes fresh on the surface, near the mouths of great rivers; but rely on it, I shall show you a way of tasting the water many fathoms deep, of which you never dreamed, and then we shall know more about it." The guide seemed content to let the matter rest, and the conversation changed. "We are not over conceited consarning our gifts," observed the Pathfinder, after a short pause, "and well know that such as live in the towns, and near the sea—" "On the sea," interrupted Cap. "On the sea, if you wish it, friend, have opportunities which do not befall us of the wilderness. Still, we know our own callings, and they are what I consider natural callings, and are not pervarted by vanity and wantonness. Now my gifts are with the rifle, and on a trail, and in the way of game and scouting; for, though I can use the spear and the paddle, I pride not myself on either. The youth Jasper there, who is discoursing with the Sergeant's daughter, is a different creature, for he may be said to breathe the water, as it might be, like a fish. The Indians and Frenchers of the north shore call him Eau douce, on account of his gifts in this particular. He is better at the oar, and the rope too, than in making fires on a trail." "There must be something about these gifts of which you speak, after all," said Cap. "Now this fire, I will acknowledge, has overlaid all my seamanship. Arrowhead there said the smoke came from a pale face's fire, and that is a piece of philosophy which I hold to be equal to steering in a dark night by the edges of the sand." "It's no great secret," returned Pathfinder, laughing with great inward glee, though habitual caution prevented the emission of any noise. "Nothing is easier to us who pass our time in the great school of Providence than to larn its lessons. We should be as useless on a trail, or in carrying tidings through the wilderness, as so many woodchucks, did we not soon come to a knowledge of these niceties. Eau douce, as we call him, is so fond of the water, that he gathered a damp stick or two for our fire, and wet will bring dark smoke, as I suppose even you followers of the sea must know. It's no great secret, though all is mystery to such as doesn't study the Lord and his mighty ways with humility and thankfulness." "That must be a keen eye of Arrowhead's to see so slight a difference." "He would be but a poor Indian if he didn't. No, no, it is war time, and no red skin is outlying without using his senses. Every skin has its own nature, and every nature has its own laws, as well as its own skin. It was many years before I could master all these higher branches of a forest education, for red skin knowledge doesn't come as easy to white skin nature, as what I suppose is intended to be white skin knowledge, though I have but little of the latter, having passed most of my time in the wilderness." "You have been a ready scholar, Master Pathfinder, as is seen by your understanding these things so well. I suppose it would be no great matter for a man regularly brought up to the sea to catch these trifles, if he could only bring his mind fairly to bear upon them." "I don't know that. The white man has his difficulties in getting red skin habits, quite as much as the Indian in getting white skin ways. As for the real nature, it is my opinion that neither can actually get that of the other." "And yet we sailors, who run about the world so much, say there is but one nature, whether it be in the Chinaman or a Dutchman. For my own part, I am much of that way of thinking too. for I have generally found that all nations like gold and silver,